Every day he sits in the same booth, collecting parking fees and handing out tickets. Drivers see a bored middle-aged guy in a worn uniform, probably making minimum wage at the worst job in downtown Seattle. They have no idea that the man watching their every move spent 20 years as the FBI's most elite behavioral analyst, profiling serial killers and solving cases that stumped entire departments. But when a pattern in his parking garage reveals the hunting ground of a killer who's terrorized the city for months, those same drivers are about to discover why you should never underestimate the person who sees you every single day. Welcome to the Silent Legends. Before we begin today's story, tell us in the comments which city you're watching from, and if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, hit that subscribe button to support us. The Century Square parking garage in downtown Seattle processed over 2,000 vehicles daily, 12 floors, 800 spaces, and one attendant who saw it all, Marcus Williams, sitting in his booth at the entrance, collecting $15 daily parking fees from office workers, shoppers, and tourists. To drivers, Marcus was invisible furniture. Middle-aged African-American man, gray uniform, patient smile, making small talk about the weather while processing payments. They assumed he was just another service worker putting in hours until retirement. What they didn't know was that Dr. Marcus Mindhunter Williams had spent 2 decades at the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit in Quantico, profiling the most dangerous serial killers in American history. He'd developed psychological assessment techniques that helped solve over 200 cases, written the manual on criminal behavior patterns, and trained the next generation of federal profilers. The parking garage job wasn't retirement, it was operational cover. After leaving the bureau, Marcus had chosen this position deliberately. Downtown Seattle attracted every demographic: business professionals, college students, tourists, criminals. The perfect laboratory for continued behavioral observation. His booth provided him with something invaluable: daily interaction with thousands of people displaying their natural behavioral patterns. Stressed executives revealed their aggression levels, nervous shoppers showed their anxiety markers, and occasionally, predators revealed themselves through subtle tells that only a trained profiler would recognize. Marcus had been tracking those tells for 8 months, building a profile that would shock the Seattle Police Department if they knew their case had already been solved by a parking lot attendant. Every vehicle that entered Marcus's garage was automatically cataloged in his memory, not just license plates and parking times, but behavioral observations that revealed psychological profiles. The red BMW that came every Tuesday and Thursday belonged to a pharmaceutical sales rep having an affair, evidenced by his nervous energy on arrival and relaxed demeanor when leaving. The blue Honda driven by the college student showed increasing stress markers over the past month, suggesting academic or financial pressure. But Marcus was particularly interested in a pattern that had emerged over the past 6 months, a series of vehicles driven by women who showed specific behavioral markers. Heightened alertness upon entering the garage, checking mirrors excessively, parking near exits or security cameras. Classic indicators of predator awareness. These women didn't know each other, came from different demographics, and parked at various times, but they all exhibited the same hypervigilance that Marcus recognized from his FBI years, the behavior of stalking victims who sensed they were being hunted. More concerning was another pattern, a rotating series of vehicles that appeared in the garage within hours of these nervous women. Different cars, different license plates, but driven by someone displaying hunting behavior. Patient observation, strategic positioning, predatory focus on specific targets. Marcus had spent 20 years studying this exact dynamic. Someone was using his parking garage as a hunting ground, and the Seattle Police Department had no idea. "Have a good day, sir," Marcus said to the driver of a gray sedan, handing him a parking ticket. But his trained eyes had already cataloged everything. Nervous energy masquerading as casual behavior, excessive scanning of the environment, and positioning that provided visual access to the elevator area where victims would be most vulnerable. This wasn't random parking. This was predatory surveillance. Marcus began systematic documentation using skills honed over decades of federal investigations. Every suspicious vehicle was photographed discreetly. Every behavioral observation was recorded in coded notes. Every pattern was analyzed through the lens of criminal psychology. The profile that emerged was disturbingly familiar organized killer, likely male, 25 to 40 years old, methodical and patient, using the parking garage's enclosed environment to select and study victims before following them to secondary locations for attacks. What made this particularly dangerous was the killer's sophistication. Different vehicles suggested stolen cars or access to multiple registrations. Varied timing indicated professional-level operational security, and the targeting pattern showed someone who understood victim psychology well enough to identify women already displaying fear responses. Marcus's FBI training told him this killer had done this before, probably in other cities, other parking structures. The behavior was too refined for a first-time offender. On a rainy Thursday morning, Marcus spotted the pattern culminating. A young professional woman in her late 20s parked on the 7th floor, displaying all the hypervigilance markers he'd been tracking. 15 minutes later, the gray sedan appeared, parking 3 spaces away with direct visual contact to her vehicle. Marcus made his decision. 20 years after leaving the FBI, Dr. Marcus Williams was going back to work. Using security camera access he'd quietly obtained through his technical skills, Marcus tracked both vehicles on the garage's surveillance system. The woman, later identified as Jennifer Chen, a marketing manager at a downtown firm, showed textbook stalking victim behavior. Quick, nervous movements, constant environmental scanning, parking near security cameras and exit routes. The gray sedan driver remained in his vehicle for 47 minutes, maintaining visual surveillance of Jennifer's car. When she returned, he followed her exit pattern, maintaining distance but staying within tracking range. Classic stalking behavior. But Marcus had advantages the killer didn't know about. His booth position allowed him to photograph the license plate clearly. His FBI contacts could run background checks that revealed the vehicle was registered to someone who'd been dead for 3 years, classic identity theft pattern used by organized criminals. More importantly, Marcus's behavioral analysis revealed psychological markers that helped him predict the killer's next moves. This type of predator operated on escalating timelines. The surveillance phase was concluding, which meant an attack was imminent. Marcus called his former FBI partner, Agent Sarah Rodriguez, now heading the Seattle field office. "Sarah, it's Marcus. I need to report a pattern that indicates active serial killing in my area." "Marcus? I thought you were retired, working some civilian job." "I am, parking garage attendant. But I've been tracking behavioral patterns that match a sophisticated predator using my location as a hunting ground." There was silence on the line. Then, "How certain are you?" "Certainty level 8 out of 10. I have photographic evidence, behavioral documentation, and victim identification. This killer is moving to action phase within 72 hours. Send me everything. We'll have a team there in 2 hours." But Marcus knew 2 hours might be too late. Jennifer Chen was displaying escalating fear markers, which meant the killer's psychological pressure was intensifying. The attack timeline was accelerating. Marcus left his booth for the first time in 8 months, using emergency protocols to secure the garage entrance. Moving through the structure with tactical awareness learned during his FBI years, he located Jennifer's usual parking spot on the 7th floor. She wasn't there yet, but the gray sedan was already positioned for surveillance. Marcus approached using his parking attendant credentials as cover. "Excuse me, sir," Marcus said, tapping on the driver's window. "We're having some maintenance issues on this level. You'll need to move to a different floor." The man who rolled down the window was exactly what Marcus's profile had predicted. Mid-30s, average appearance, calm demeanor, masking predatory focus. Someone who'd perfected the art of blending in while hunting. "I'm just waiting for someone," the man said with practiced casualness. "I understand, but for safety reasons, you'll need to relocate." Marcus's voice carried the quiet authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "I can help you find a good spot on the 5th floor." What the killer didn't realize was that Marcus was conducting a real-time psychological assessment. Speech patterns, eye movement, body language, all confirming his profile while gathering evidence that would be crucial for prosecution. The man agreed to move, but Marcus could see the predatory frustration beneath his cooperative facade. The hunting pattern had been disrupted, which would force the killer to adapt his timeline or seek alternative venues. 20 minutes later, Jennifer Chen arrived, parked in her usual spot, and left for work. She never knew that her stalker had been watching from 3 spaces away, or that a parking lot attendant had just saved her life. FBI agents arrived within the hour, but the gray sedan was gone. However, Marcus's documentation provided them with everything needed for a comprehensive investigation: behavioral analysis, photographic evidence, timeline patterns, and psychological profile. "Marcus," Agent Rodriguez said, reviewing his files, "this is exceptional work. Bureau quality analysis." "Once a profiler, always a profiler," Marcus replied. "But we need to move fast. I disrupted his pattern, which means he'll either escalate with this victim or move to a new hunting ground." The investigation Marcus initiated led to a coordinated manhunt across 3 states. The vehicle identification traced to a network of stolen cars used in similar stalking patterns in Portland, San Francisco, and Denver. The psychological profile matched unsolved cases dating back 5 years. Within 48 hours, the suspect was apprehended at another parking structure in Portland, attempting to execute the same pattern with a different victim. The arrest prevented what would have been his 8th confirmed kill. During interrogation, the suspect's confession revealed that Marcus's intervention had indeed disrupted a planned attack. Jennifer Chen had been selected as a target, studied for weeks, and scheduled for abduction that same Thursday evening. "The parking guy spooked me," the killer admitted. "He was too observant, asked too many questions. I knew someone was watching." Someone was indeed watching, someone with 20 years of experience hunting the hunters. 3 days later, Marcus was back in his booth, collecting parking fees and greeting customers with his usual patient smile. The news media had covered the arrest as another FBI success story, with no mention of the parking lot attendant whose behavioral analysis had solved the case. "Morning, Marcus," said Jennifer Chen, arriving for work as usual. She had no idea she'd been targeted by a serial killer, or that the friendly parking attendant had saved her life. "Good morning, Ms. Chen. Beautiful day, isn't it?" "It really is. You know, I've been feeling much better lately, more relaxed. I can't explain why, but that anxiety I'd been having just disappeared." Marcus smiled. Predator removal often had that effect on potential victims. Some primitive survival instinct recognized when the threat was gone, even if they couldn't consciously identify what had changed. "Sometimes things just work out the way they're supposed to," Marcus replied, handing her the parking ticket. Agent Rodriguez visited that afternoon, offering Marcus consultant contracts, teaching positions, and fieldwork opportunities. The FBI wanted their top profiler back. "Thanks, but I'm happy where I am," Marcus said, gesturing to his booth and the busy garage around them. "You're happy being a parking lot attendant?" "I'm happy being where I can do the most good. Some predators hunt in back alleys and abandoned buildings. Others hunt in plain sight, in places where people feel safe. This is where I need to be." Marcus Williams never returned to the FBI. He remained exactly where he'd chosen to be, in a parking booth watching over thousands of people who never knew they were being protected. Because sometimes the most important battles aren't fought in federal buildings or courtrooms. Sometimes they're fought in parking garages by someone who notices patterns that everyone else misses. Sometimes the person you barely notice, the one taking your money and handing you a ticket, is the one standing between you and the darkness. Now I ask you, have you ever met someone like Marcus? Someone whose ordinary jobs seem too simple for their obvious intelligence and awareness? These people are everywhere. Your parking attendant, your security guard, your cashier. Living quiet lives, using extraordinary skills to keep us safe in ways we'll never know. Tell us in the comments, who in your daily routine might be protecting you without you realizing it? If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe, because at the Silent Legends, we honor those who watch over us from the shadows, keeping us safe while we go about our ordinary lives. And remember, the next time someone takes your parking fee, maybe look them in the eye and say thank you. You never know what they're protecting you from.